A 30-year-old priest sits by a muddy irrigation canal in Babylon, feeling the grit of foreign dust in his teeth. His name is Ezekiel, on the rocky island of Patmos. Same faces, same fire, same terrifying proximity to the throne. Most people assume the creatures Ezekiel and John see. This is not a relocation. It is an abandonment. The heart of the nation has just stopped beating. The temple is no longer a sanctuary. It is just a hollow shell of stones waiting for the torches of the Babylonian army. The Cherubim do not stay to protect the architecture. They do not stay to guard the religious artifacts. They carry the presence away from the corruption, moving east, toward the exiles, toward the muddy canals, toward the broken people bleeding in the foreign dirt. God has left his house to be with his captives. The throne is empty. The mountain is bare. The engine of Eden has taken to the sky. For centuries, the story of these creatures stops in this tragic, hovering moment. The temple is destroyed. The exiles weep. The ancient prophets go silent. And the visions fade into the dry parchment of the scrolls. But the Chayot are not finished. They have one more appearance to make, centuries later, in a completely different empire. And the next time they step out of the text, they will not be leaving a temple. They will be doing something that shatters our entire concept of heaven. You sit in a wooden pew, or maybe a padded theater chair, and you close your eyes and try to picture the throne room of God are just surreal decorations. We read about the four faces: the man, the lion, the ox, the eagle. We picture the intersecting wheels covered in eyes. If you are like most people sitting in a modern congregation, the image your mind produces is deeply sanitized. You probably picture soft, glowing light pouring through a perfectly serene sky. You might hear the faint, echoing pluck of strings, a gentle choir singing in the distance, a profound and unbroken quiet. You imagine a space that feels like a cosmic waiting room, a peaceful retirement sanctuary for the soul, where nothing dangerous ever happens. The heaven you have been handed is safe. The heaven you have been handed is still. But this quiet, the domesticated version of the spiritual realm, is completely foreign to the ancient texts you hold in your lap. The prophets did not see a serene meadow. Heaven is not a peaceful retirement home. It is a pulsing, active command center. And the beings standing at the center of it are not the plastic figurines you see glued to a nativity set or printed in a children's Bible. Think about what your Sunday school teachers did to these creatures. They took the terrifying engines of Eden beings that glow like molten metal, that roar like crashing waves, that possess a fierce, multi-directional vigilance, and turned them into soft, smiling babies with pigeon wings. We do this because the raw reality of the biblical text is too heavy for us to hold. If you actually stepped into the presence, we hear the roaring sound of their wings that crashes like a waterfall. And we treat them like ancient, abstract art. We assume they are of the throne. You would not feel relaxed. You would feel the hot wind of a hurricane against your face. You would smell the heavy, pungent scent of burning incense mixed with scorched earth. You would hear the deafening, industrial roar of wings that sound like an army marching into battle. Your body would carry the instinct to fall flat on the floor. The real tragedy of the sanitized heaven is that it shrinks the scale of what God is actually doing. When you reduce the living creatures to harmless decorations, you reduce the throne they surround to a passive piece of furniture. You lose the terrifying, electric vitality of the divine presence. When you strip the danger out of the throne room, you strip the power out of the promises. If the God you pray to is just sitting in a quiet, misty void, it is hard to believe he has the capacity to intervene in the chaos of your actual life. You begin to worship a God who sits still. But the God of the biblical text does not sit still. And the creatures who guard his throne never sleep, never look away, and never stop moving. If you want to see what happens when a human being is actually pulled into that terrifying command center, you have to leave the Old Testament behind. You have to fast forward through centuries of silence. Past the fall of Babylon, past the rise of Rome, just a bizarre subcategory of angels. Strange bodyguards for the heavenly throne room. We put them in stained glass windows. We draw them in prophetic charts to a rocky prison island in the Aegean Sea. Because the ancient engines of Eden are about to power up one more time. An old man sits on the jagged rocks of Patmos. The Aegean Sea crashes against the stone. Salt spray stings his cracked lips. Roman guards patrol the high perimeter of the penal colony. His name is John. He is the last living apostle. The rest have been hunted down. The others have been executed. The temple in Jerusalem has been burned to the ground all over again by Roman torches. The early believers are scattered. John is exiled, surrounded by cold water, waiting for the end of his life in an empire that demands to be worshipped. Rome thinks it rules the world. Domitian thinks he is a god. And then the sky tears open. A trumpet blasts behind the old man. The sound is so loud, it vibrates in his teeth. A voice speaks with the volume of rushing water. A door stands open in the fabric of the sky. John steps through the threshold. He does not find a quiet, misty sanctuary. He finds a storm. Lightning flashes from a central throne. Thunder crashes in rhythmic, deafening strikes. The floor is a sea of glass, gleaming like dark crystal under the fire. 7 torches burn with a heat he can feel instantly on his skin. We reduce them to theological puzzles waiting to be decoded on a whiteboard. We think if we can just figure out what the lion represents. And standing in the very center, forming a tight perimeter around the throne itself, are the ancient engines. The 4 living creatures. The empire has changed. The language has changed. But the protocol of the throne room has not moved an inch. A lion stands ready to strike. An ox waits with unbearable strength. A man looks with piercing intelligence. An eagle hovers in flight. They are the apex of the wild. They are the apex of the tame. They are the apex of humanity. They are the apex of the sky. All of biological creation is compressed into these 4 burning bodies. They are covered with eyes. Eyes in front. Eyes behind. Eyes under their 6 massive wings. Total. Unblinking vigilance in every conceivable direction. John is a Jewish man writing in Greek. He reaches for a word to describe the terrifying vitality burning in front of him. He does not use the Greek word for angel, angelos. He does not use the word for spirit, pneuma. He uses the word zoon. It is the exact Greek equivalent of Ezekiel's chayot. It means the living ones, the raw, undiluted essence of life. They do not sleep. They do not sit day and night. They move around the fire, day and night. They cry out with a sound that shakes the sea of glass. Holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come, or what the eagle stands for. We have mastered the text. But if you look closer at the specific Hebrew words used to identify them, this is not a choir singing a lullaby. It is an engine of creation recognizing its source. Every time the Zun cry out, the 24 elders fall to the ground. The creatures dictate the rhythm of the heavenly temple. They lead the response. They are the choir directors of the apocalypse. But their presence in this specific room points to a reality much larger than John's personal vision. Because they are no longer just guarding a geographical boundary in the dirt, and they are no longer carrying the chariot away from a broken temple. We read the final book of the biblical text and assume it is primarily a manual for cosmic destruction. We look at the breaking seals, the falling stars, the poisoned rivers, and we brace ourselves for the annihilation of the physical world. Revelation is not the story of an escape pod. It is the story of a reclamation project. To understand the role of the 4 living creatures in this reclamation, you have to look at what they are actually representing in the architecture of the universe. They are the apex of the wild beasts, the livestock, the birds, and humanity. They are the physical embodiment of the created order, standing inside the spiritual control room. In the ancient mind, a temple was designed to be a miniature model of the cosmos, at the terrifying implications of what they are carrying. At exactly when and why they decide to show up, you start to see something: the decorative reading. The priests inside that temple served a highly specific function. They stood in the gap. They took the raw materials of the earth grain from the field, oil from the press. The heavy scent of burning frankincense is the blood from the flock, and they carried those physical realities into the presence of the divine. They gave creation a voice. The four living creatures are the cosmic priesthood. When humanity was placed in the Garden of Eden, we were given the mandate to be the primary priests of the physical world. We were supposed to stand at the boundary between heaven and earth, ordering the chaos and leading the symphony of the created order. But we fractured the boundary. We turned the garden into a graveyard, and ever since that expulsion, creation has been groaning under the weight of our failure. The living creatures stand in the gap where we fell short. When they circle the sea of glass, when their wings vibrate with the heavy roar of a waterfall, they are doing what a mountain, a forest, or an ocean cannot articulate in language. They are gathering the collective groan of the physical universe, every beating pulse, every breath drawn in the dirt, the smell of rain on dry soil, the heat of sunlight on skin, and they are translating all of that raw, biological vitality into a relentless liturgy of praise, completely misses. These beings are not a puzzle to be solved. They are the mobile engine of an uncontainable God. The real question of these: modern theology has a terrible habit of splitting the spiritual from the physical. We treat the material world like disposable staging, a temporary set design that will eventually burn up so our souls can float away into a misty void. But the throne room completely rejects that division. The beings closest to the fire of God do not look like formless ghosts. They look like muscle and bone, mane and feather, hoof and claw. They are fiercely, violently, undeniably connected to the dirt. They carry the essence of the biological world right up to the edge of the blazing amber light, refusing to let the Creator forget the creation. They are not leaving the earth behind. They are holding the earth up. Creation is already standing at the center of the throne, fully awake, and doing exactly what it was designed to do. But there is a final piece to this architecture, a reason why the living creatures look at us through the ancient texts, with those terrifying, unblinking eyes, and it demands an answer from anyone who is paying attention. A priest sat exiled in the Babylonian dirt, and the massive wheels descended into the mud. A sanctuary choked on the stench of idolatry, and the glory lifted off the threshold to follow the captives east. Visions isn't. What do the four faces mean? It's this. Why did the throne of the universe leave the temple and land in the dirt? An apostle waited on the jagged rocks of Patmos, and a door blew open in the fabric of the sky. The face of the lion burned in the storm, and the king of the wild was pulled to the throne. The face of the ox stood firm in the fire, and the heavy labor of the earth was recognized. The face of the eagle hovered over the crystal sea, and the breath of the sky was gathered in. The face of the man looked perfectly forward, and the shattered priesthood of Eden was finally made whole. One engine, one uncontainable presence. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The wheels, the massive, vertigo-inducing wheels, covered in shifting eyes, humming with terrifying speed, grinding against the foreign soil. Not a static piece of furniture, bolted to the bedrock of a golden room, a divine chariot that crosses enemy lines to reach the people sitting in the dark. If you are in a season where the divine presence feels like a geographical impossibility, where you feel like you are standing outside the borders of grace, sitting by a muddy canal of your own failure, staring at an empire of anxiety that has taken you captive, you need to look into the storm. The answer changes how you read every vision of heaven. From the Old Testament prophets to the final chapters of Revelation, it strips away the throne of the universe does not wait for you to build a perfect sanctuary. It does not require you to clean up the dirt before the fire arrives. When you are dragged into the abyss, his throne grows wheels. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels like they are sitting in exile right now. Pray for us. as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who refuses to be trapped in a temple, the God who rides the storm into the darkest refugee camps of the human heart, meet you in your exile and show you a fire that cannot be contained. He has no temple. He has no altar. He has no incense to burn. He is supposed to be in Jerusalem, sanitized, peaceful versions of the spiritual realm, and replaces them with something wild, dangerous, and fiercely alive. But to feel the weight of this arrival, to understand what is actually happening when the storm breaks over Babylon, you cannot start by looking at the faces. You have to look down. You have to look at the impossible machinery underneath their feet. To understand the shock of Ezekiel's vision, you have to understand the architecture of ancient Near Eastern theology. In the ancient world, deities were profoundly geographic. A god belonged to a specific city, a specific mountain, or a specific river. If an empire defeated your nation in battle, it was because their local god was physically stronger than your local god. And if that empire took you captive, chaining your wrists and dragging you hundreds of miles into exile, you were being dragged away from your god's jurisdiction. That is the crippling theological crisis of the Babylonian exile. The Israelites have lost Jerusalem, the temple of Yahweh. The place where heaven and earth supposedly overlapped is hundreds of miles to the west, sitting abandoned and vulnerable. For the exiles weeping by the muddy irrigation canals of Babylon, the assumption is devastatingly simple. He is supposed to be stepping into the priesthood, beginning his life's work, standing in the holy precincts where God's presence was promised to dwell. God is back there, and we are stuck here. We are outside his borders. We are out of his reach. But when the text of Ezekiel chapter 1 introduces the four living creatures, it anchors them to something that completely shatters this ancient assumption. It anchors them to wheels. The Hebrew text describes a wheel intersecting another wheel, gleaming like beryl or chrysolite, massive in scale and covered entirely with blinking, shifting eyes. These wheels do not pivot or turn as they move. They can go in any of the four directions instantly, darting back and forth like flashes of lightning across the desert floor. This is not a static throne, bolted to the bedrock of a temple. It is a divine chariot. For a priest like Ezekiel, whose entire life and lineage revolved around the stationary Holy of Holies, the immovable Ark of the Covenant, and the fixed geographic center of Mount Zion, the implications of this impossible machinery are staggering. The presence of God has left the building. The glory of Yahweh has crossed enemy lines. The wheels are not just a strange aesthetic detail. They are a theological revolution. They declare that the God of Israel is not bound by the coordinates of a sanctuary built by human hands, but instead, he is a prisoner of war, sitting among thousands of traumatized refugees on the edge of the Chebar Canal. The sky grows dark. He is not trapped in the ruins of Jerusalem. He is not restricted to the territory of his own nation. When his people are dragged into the dirt and darkness of a pagan empire, his throne grows wheels and follows them right into the abyss. The sheer scale of this mobile throne is terrifying. The wheels are so high, they induce vertigo. The sound of their movement is like the roar of a military encampment. But as the wheels flash and hum, grinding against the Babylonian soil, Ezekiel's eyes are drawn upward. He looks past the gleaming machinery, past the shifting eyes on the outer rims, toward the beings who are moving in perfect synchronization with this massive chariot. And what he sees staring back at him out of the storm defies every category of earthly biology. Ezekiel stands frozen in the mud. The storm breaks open. The amber core expands. Four forms step out of the lightning. They burn like torches. Fire darts back and forth between them. Heat pushes against Ezekiel's skin. The smell of scorched ozone and burning dust fills the air. He looks at their bodies. Their legs are straight. Their feet gleam like burnished bronze. They strike the ground like the heavy hooves of a calf. And then the wind begins to blow from the north. It is not a gentle breeze. It is a violent, howling squall that kicks up the desert sand. He looks at their sides. Human hands reach out from beneath heavy feathers. Two wings cover their forms. Two wings stretch out to touch the creature beside them. They form a perfect, terrifying square. He listens to their movement. The sound of their wings crashes like an ocean tide. It vibrates in Ezekiel's chest. It roars like the deafening shout of a marching army. And then he looks at their heads. This is where the human mind fractures. Each creature possesses 4 distinct faces. 4 pairs of eyes unblinking in the fire. A human face looks straight ahead. A lion stares to the right. An ox glares to the left. An eagle watches the rear. There is no blind spot. There is no vulnerable angle. They look in every direction at once. The king of the wild beasts. The king of the livestock. The king of the birds. The king of the earth. All of creation is bound up in their bodies. All of nature is woven into their flesh. When the spirit moves, they move. They do not turn their bodies. They do not pivot. They strike forward like a flash of lightning. They drop from the sky. They hover over the dirt. This is not a vision meant to comfort. It is an arrival meant to overwhelm. We are trained to read this passage like a fantasy novel. We try to sketch the creatures on paper. We try to map out the physics of the wings and the faces. A massive storm cloud rolls across the horizon, flashing with continuous, blinding lightning. The center of the cloud glows like hot metal pulled fresh from a furnace. But Ezekiel is not drawing a picture. He is falling on his face. The sheer weight of their presence forces him to the ground. He is a priest who knows the strict boundaries of the holy places. He knows the thick curtain that separates God from humanity. He knows the rituals required just to stand near the shadow of this glory. Now the curtain is gone. The temple walls are missing. The glory is standing in a refugee camp. These beings do not belong in Babylon. They belong in the throne room. They are not peaceful guardians of a quiet eternity. They are the fierce, unblinking engines of a holy war. Ezekiel is staring at the apex of all living things. But what exactly are they? Centuries of tradition will call them angels. Painters will give them soft halos and gentle eyes. Modern readers will skip past them to find a more comforting verse. But the Hebrew text refuses to let us domesticate them. Ezekiel uses a very specific word to name what is standing in front of him, and the root of that word changes exactly how we are supposed to see them. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 5. He is a priest trying to articulate the impossible forms hovering over the Babylonian mud, radiating a brilliant amber light. This is not a weather event. This is an arrival. And what steps out of the center of this fire? English translations usually label what he sees with a 2-word phrase, living creatures. But the word Ezekiel writes on the parchment is the Hebrew chayot. It is the plural form of the root word chaya, which means life, breath, or raw vitality. The noun form does not describe a specific biological species of animal. It describes the very essence of being alive. They are the chayot, the living ones. They are the unfiltered, uncontainable concentration of pure biological and spiritual energy, pulsing in the center of the storm. If something about this story is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the priest keeps watching the fire. And years later, when he is given another vision and sees these exact same beings again, in Ezekiel chapter 10, the vocabulary shifts, and a terrifying realization hits him. He gives them a second name, a specific title. He writes, "I knew that they were the cherubim." We have entirely ruined this word. Centuries of Renaissance art have conditioned us to hear the word cherub and picture a chubby, dimpled infant sitting on a fluffy white cloud. Strumming a miniature harp is one of the most terrifying, misunderstood, and repeated sights in the entire biblical text. 4 living creatures. They step out of the storm again and again. But in the ancient Near Eastern context, and in the Hebrew scriptures, a cherub is a lethal, hybrid guardian of sacred space. It is the exact same word used in Genesis chapter 3. When humanity is expelled from the Garden of Eden, God does not just close a wooden gate. He stations the Cherubim at the east of the garden, holding a flaming sword that flashes back and forth, slicing the air, to guard the way to the tree of life. They are the fierce boundary markers between the corruptible earth and the consuming fire of God's holy presence. That route changes everything. When Ezekiel sees the Chayot functioning as the Cherubim in the dirt of a refugee camp, the realization is staggering. They are not decorative angels. They are the lethal boundary of Eden, moving in real time. They carry the dividing line between heaven and earth on their shoulders. And now, this boundary is moving. The chariot is fully operational. The engines of Eden are firing, and the entire structure is preparing to do something unthinkable. The unthinkable happens in Ezekiel chapter 10. Ezekiel is transported in a vision across the desert, back to the city of his birth. He stands in the inner courts of the temple in Jerusalem. This is the epicenter of the Israelite universe. They appear in the dirt of Babylon. They appear in the inner sanctum of a doomed temple. They appear centuries later to an exiled prisoner. This is the place where heaven and earth are stitched together, but the air is heavy with impending doom. The stone floor is cold beneath his feet. The sweet smell of incense has been replaced by the stench of idolatry creeping into the courtyards. And then, the sound begins. It starts as a low vibration deep in the cedar beams. It builds into the deafening, ocean crash roar of the Cherubim wings, vibrating through the massive stone columns, shaking the gold-plated walls of the inner sanctuary. The glowing, amber cloud begins to move. The glory of Yahweh, the physical, consuming weight of his presence that had rested in the suffocating darkness of the Holy of Holies for 400 years rises. It lifts off the golden lid of the Ark of the Covenant, the place where the blood of atonement was sprinkled. It hovers over the threshold of the doorway, the place where the priests walked with trembling feet. It moves toward the eastern gate of the city, the place facing the rising sun, facing the empire that is coming to burn it all to the ground. The wheels hum with terrifying speed, cutting through the heavy air, while the four faces look perfectly forward, unbroken in their terrifying symmetry, with the fierce, unblinking eyes of the living creatures burning in the storm. The chariot lifts off the mountain completely. The glory departs.